So from that point of view, we then have been forced to be very active. South Africa is the first country in the world that experimented with what we call today an emergency towing vessel. We call them salvage tugs. And we did that because you need to have all the tools you need when you have a casualty. It's not like when you are in the English Channel.
Yes.
If the UK doesn't have it, Netherlands will have it, France will have it, you know, and if nobody has it, Norway is just up the road from there.
You rely on
ourselves. We rely purely on ourselves. Now, firstly, it's a very expensive thing to do. Now, we've had to be quite creative then. And we're the only country in this part of the world that had full satellite surveillance systems, so that we know exactly what is happening in our maritime domain at any point in time. It allows us to cut back on the investment we need on hard infrastructure, and it allows us to contribute to the management of the world security challenges, maritime security challenges. We participate in the Djibouti Code of Conduct, where we were dealing with the Somali pirate issues. We participate in International Maritime Organization, participate in search and rescue organizations, and we have, as one ministry, we obviously combine the aviation and the maritime search and rescue, and we're the only parties that can do that in this part of the world. So our influence then can never be understated by the very fact that we need to provide that assurance to international shipping. And in fact, that has been our selling point when we've been saying, come towards South Africa, you guaranteed that your insurance premiums will not increase. And I know sometimes when they went through the Suez Canal at some stage, there was a premium linked to transiting those piracy waters. You know, so we generally, we've got the Marine Highway Project, where we literally guide and monitor traffic that is going through our coastline. So we've put in quite a great deal of investment and made quite a lot of noise about it, because we think we should, just to give guarantees to international shipping. And we think that the world notices, because we have consistently stayed as members of the International Maritime Organization Council, which is a governing body for the International Maritime Organization. And we've actually got an office, a permanent representative in London, just to make sure that our interests are taken care of from a governance point of view.
Very important. So punching above your weight, more or less, South Africa speaks on behalf of the continent to the rest of the world, in a way.
And we do not have an option. Remember, the biggest challenge the biggest opportunity, if you look at sub-Saharan Africa, again, those numbers, 1.2 billion people in 2012, which is going to double by 2050. Now, if you go to the stats, the population stats, the youngest population in the entire world. So they're going to drive the consumption, but they're going to drive the growth. Remember, Africa has got the most natural resources of the entire world concentrated in the one place. So growth is going to happen in Africa. You were saying that the CEO of Total said that. We know that. Now, what then it leaves us with is, if we do not do what we're doing now and get into Africa, everybody is going to come to Africa.
Of course. Yes.
Now, the world is there for us to explore. But the difficulty there is that any unmanaged exploration tends to upset the balance, affect ecosystems, and do all sorts of things. Now, if you've got a growing population, South Africa today, there's 56 million people in the country. There is no less than 10% of immigrants, and most of those are immigrants from the continent in search of economic opportunity. So as a country, we're under a great deal of strain to ensure that we assist firstly the region, which is SADC, SADC region, and to try and go beyond the region. You would know that there is an infrastructure commission that South Africa is chairing, and that's for Africa. There is obviously SADC, which is an economic community. So all of these things we need to do to really get the continent to increase its intra-regional trade. Now, our ex-president Zuma is on record saying there's very little trade we're doing amongst each other. But when it comes to assisting each other, you find that South Africa carries an inordinate amount of burden. So there is a need then to balance the assistance you're giving as a country to the economic benefit that you can derive from the continent. And if you could try and reverse all those issues that cause migration towards South Africa, then it solves a lot of our problems. So the reason we do not have a choice but to play the role we're playing in Africa. And in fact, if you go to chapter 7 of our National Development Plan, it talks about international relations for the country. It would say that there is a need for us to play a very crucial role in international relations, starting with the continent. And so for us, in that regard, South Africa is the chair of the Association for African Maritime Administrations. And what we do there, we try and assist with capacity for training. We've made our training vessel available to the entire continent.
Wow, okay.
Our long-range identification and tracking systems is available to all the countries that want to take it, because our satellite surveillance systems can be made available to the continent. And the reason we're doing that, as I'm saying, is just to ensure that there's better governance, there's better capacity, and hopefully with it, an increased economic activity in those areas, which then tend to solve our problems.
Of course. So helping to lift up the rest of the continent as well.
Yes.
At the end of the day, I suppose everyone did prefer to have jobs instead of aid as well.
Exactly.
No matter where you go, I think, in the world. But on that note, I know we keep talking about, learning from Singapore, Aberdeen, the other maritime hubs of the world. But flipping the question, I'm sure South Africa and SAMSA has great lessons that other ports can learn from as well. So what would you like to share?
As I was saying, we're a humble organization. We try and really humble ourselves. So we find that we get a lot of visitors. Particularly, I was talking to some entity, because we've got an agreement with them on manpower development. It's a Norwegian shipping company. It takes South Africans. So I asked, but why South Africans? He said, for the simple reason that you guys are a rainbow nation. So your people are already socialized into the same type of a setup that you find inside a ship. You find a Filipino captain with a Polish chief engineer, with a Russian second mate. Now, we find that we are able, firstly, to manage those diversity issues quite well. And I think it is one advantage that we're downplaying. And I think Mandela played that in a very big way. And I don't think we built on that. That is one. But secondly, from a technical ability point of view, we have handled some of the most intriguing marine casualties. I can tell you now, if any type of a casual disaster, marine disaster you can find, I've seen it. and we've managed it.
Okay.
Last year in October was it, when we had a big storm in Durban. We had a total of 13 ships affected, 6 of which ran aground, and we almost closed the port. So if it is about emergency response systems, we think we've got something to share with the world. Again, because we've just been left to our own devices. I've never called anybody to say, come help. If there's a problem, we improvise. And I think that that originality is what we really pride ourselves with. We've generally tried to share some of or most of those experiences with the international maritime organizations. I do think that we need to write more about our achievements. Maybe that's one thing we don't do enough of.
I think so. We found that South Africans here are very humble. They like to understate their achievements. There's very little bragging. So in the interviews it can be a bit difficult because I'm trying to say, no, tell us your achievements. And say, well, we did this, but there were some other minor issues that we need to fix. No. Let's stay on the high achievements. And on that note as well, looking at the training programs that you said was a long-term strategy for the organization, what are some of the new programs, initiatives that you will continue to build on?
We've got I did say, population of about 56 million rand, 56 million people, sorry. Talk about money all the time. And we've got a high level of unemployment. Now, what we then have said we need to be doing is to find work for this nation that's building up and that doesn't have options. Now, we went seafarer training in the basic definition of seafarer training initially. But we have since found that there is a lot more options surrounding the cruise tourism. And you can employ a lot more numbers using the cruise tourism, because then those are the people that don't need as much training as the officers and official seafarers on the ship. So that is what we've done, and it's since taking off. The year before last we took about 18. This past year we took 99. And that number is likely to be growing towards the 500 people mark per year. Now we're hoping that that is going to be an even bigger contribution. It's not bad jobs, they pay quite well, monies that are foreign earnings to the country. And we've got the people that are there unemployed already. We've got the ability to train them. So the one part that we need, and if you guys write the message well, let anybody come to South Africa if they want any of those cruise tourism. I've got a representative in the US today on the international cruise tourism in Durban. In where are they? Somewhere in the US. I forgot, Miami.
Maybe?
Yeah, I think it's Miami actually.
One or the other.
So yeah, and our intention then is to really market this this resource. So we are hoping that that just on the manpower development, we're going to solve this country's problems. And we think that, as we normally say, that the maritime industry development is a precondition to Africa's development.